In case you're new here, I'm Heather, and this is Bill. We've been exploring places in Greece that are off the beaten path. This week, we find our way out of Messene and move on to Olympia, the origin of modern-day Olympic Games. This just feels wrong. What the heck?
What is this place?
It's crazy. In the last video, we left off with us driving roads leaving Messene that were getting narrower and narrower, yet they somehow still claimed they were for two-way traffic. Oh God. What the hell, Google?
At least once a trip, we get caught on what I call a goat trail.
This is a goat trail, and I didn't do it. Thanks, Google.
This is this trip's goat trail. Kind of wishing I had a four-wheel drive about now.
Oh my God, this is just...
We checked, we're in the right place. We're where Google thinks we should be.
This is...
Between Messene and Olympia. So we've been on the goat trail for about 15 minutes with lots of forks in the road.
It's been horrible.
Each one we think, surely this is the paved road coming up. However, we finally reached the paved road. Here it is. We're not gonna die out in the olive groves.
Oh my God.
With a stranded rental car and no cell service.
It was very touch and go, a lot of washed out roads. We're probably dragging half an olive grove with us.
So good morning from Olympia. We got a little bit of a slow start this morning.
The reality of travel is that things don't always go perfectly as you plan. Sometimes you go down the goatiest of goat trails, and sometimes you end up in a hotel with pretty thin walls and a sick toddler who screams until 2 a.m. in the room next to you. Cheers! That's why we have coffee.
So come along with us. We're really excited to see the Olympic ruins.
It's our third major ruins of Greece for this trip, so we're really curious to contrast and compare them to the two previous ones that we saw.
So we're here on a Saturday. It is very quiet, so you can see there's just a handful of other tourists. But normally we understand there would be a long line out here for the tickets and tour buses and everything else. So this is really nice. COVID has some positive effects for the traveler right now. Okay.
We're going to visit a number of significant buildings in Olympia, including the Gymnasium, the Palestra, Temple of Hera, Temple of Zeus, the stadium, and the hotel.
This was the edge of the gymnasium. The gymnasium was built to be the same size of the stadium where the athletes would actually do their competition. The Olympians would arrive here a month early in order to acclimate themselves to the area in order to practice their skill before competing in the games. Kind of sounds a little bit familiar to what happens with today's Olympic Games. This is the Palestra. This is another training building. Whereas the gymnasium was used for running event training, this was used for sports that were a little bit more personal, like boxing and wrestling, but also the long jump. Because it was exposed to the sun, the players would cover themselves in oil and then a little bit of sand. And what comes to mind for me is that Friends episode where Ross gets his pants stuck and tries baby powder and lotions and oils to try to get them unstuck.
It's still not coming on, man, and the lotion and the powder have made a paste.
Well, here's the bathtub where Ross would have cleaned off his legs so that his pants would become unstuck. And this also is where the old Olympic players, while they were training, would clean off their sand and their oil at the end of the day.
One of the things we've noticed is these bricks here, they're 2,500 years old, and they really don't look all that different from bricks that are used to build things today. And even after 2,500 years, we can see that the construction and the workmanship was amazing. As you look down the edge of this wall, everything is flat, planar, straight, plumb, very well done. And to have held up all this time, more or less, is quite amazing. You've got the Olympic Games going on, and you've got hundreds or even thousands of athletes and dignitaries. They gotta stay someplace. Well, here's a giant hotel. 145 rooms for the aristocrats and the better known athletes, let's say. And they had a pool. Looks like a moat, but it's a pool. Just like modern hotels, right?
It might be an early version of a lazy river.
Yeah.
Just outside of the Temple of Zeus, and the column that you can see behind me actually is reconstructed for the 2004 Olympic Games, which were held here in Athens. It's actually fantastic they did this reconstruction because we're able to see just how gigantic these columns were. It's so impressive. The Temple of Zeus was an enormous structure because it needed to be a temple befitting of a god like Zeus. But Zeus did not always have his own temple. Before he had his own temple, he shared a temple with Hera. And Hera's temple actually came first. For about 200 years, she had her own and Zeus shared it. It kind of makes sense because the two of them were husband and wife, so why not have them share their own temple? But they were also brother and sister. This is the tunnel that the athletes would enter the stadium through. They would run through it to the roar of the crowd, much like today's NFL teams. Now there are a bunch of what looks like pockmarks in the wall, but those are actually lockers where the athletes could store things as they entered into the arena. What would they store? I don't know, but apparently these athletes competed naked, so perhaps they stuffed their toga and sandals into these lockers while they were entering their competition. This is the stadium. You might recognize it if you watched the 2004 Olympic Games, which took place here in Athens, because the shot put event actually took place here. For the first time in hundreds of years, an Olympic victor was crowned from an event that took place here in ancient Olympia. Now, back in the day, women were not allowed to attend the games that took place here. Men were allowed, boys were allowed, and young girls were allowed, but not women, with one exception, and that was the priestess for one of the goddesses. And she sat in the throne that's on one side of the stadium. On the other side of the stadium, the only other seats belonged to the judges who underwent months of training just to be judges for a few days of the Olympic Games. Everyone else who attended had to pull up some grass, and I am guessing that they brought with them an ancient form of a blanket for them and their family to sit on. The stadium itself is estimated to have been able to hold 45,000 people. I have to say, while this stadium is impressive because of its history, I do think that the one in Messene that we visited just the other day was a little bit more impressive because of all of the built-in seating that was on one end that is still visible today.
just wrapping up here at the archaeological site. We really enjoyed it. It's not quite as impressive as Messene. So Messene, much of it is much better preserved, but certainly Olympia is more impressive in terms of its cultural significance, both for the ancient Greeks, but also the modern version of the Olympics.
It took us about 2.5 hours to go through Olympia, ancient Olympia. So it takes us a little bit longer than others to go through things because we're doing some recording for our friends over at YouTube. Since we've been mentioning shoes for everywhere so far, I thought I'd note that I wore my hiking sandals for this outing and had no problem. So sandals are a go for this trip. Also, your ticket includes entry to 2 museums that are nearby. So we're gonna check those out after this and let you guys know whether it's worth it.
But for now, off to lunch.
All these cute cafes spilling out on the street. This is what you do on a hot day in Greece. You have a smoothie and some ice cream, and then you get a happy spouse.
That's very different. It's delicious.
What flavor is it? Baklava. Baklava flavored ice cream. Did not know that existed.
It tastes like honey and walnuts. It's great.
We just finished having a snack in the modern town of Olympia, and as we were walking back from the ruins, we kind of hit a couple of shops. We had a little bit of gift buying to do, and we couldn't help but notice how empty everything is. The shop owners told us that normally at this time of the year, everything is full, but the tourist buses, for whatever reason, aren't coming into town the way they normally do, and they're just going to the ruins. Best guess is that it's a COVID thing.
Yeah, we're here on a Saturday in late June at about 2 in the afternoon. This should just be teeming with people, and unfortunately it just isn't. And so it's really tough on the restaurant owners, the shopkeepers. They need tourist dollars, and unfortunately it's being kept away from them at the moment.
So if you come, bring a little bit extra spending money and buy some gifts for your loved ones back home. That's our recommendation. Spend a little bit of time and money when you're downtown.
Yep.
You guys, we just had the craziest thing happen. We thought that it was just a line, but it wasn't. It happened so fast we didn't record any of it. We snapped a quick photo, but this guy was standing outside a shop, and he was,
He was a shop owner. He was trying to get some business, and we figured that's what it was. It was some scheme to get people in the door.
And he was like, "Where are you guys from?" Like hollering across the road to everybody who passed. We said where we were going and kept walking, just assuming that it was like just a way to get you into the shop, and that was sort of that. The guy's sister.
She proceeded to tell us that if you live in Olympia and you're a runner, there's a fair chance, if you're well known as a runner, you'll be carrying the Olympic torch.
Or running with the person who's carrying it. Not actually carrying it yourself, but hold the phone, stop the bus, stop the presses, stop everything. We were so excited about the experience that we had that we recorded right away, and we did not agree on what happened when we were in the store. So here's what we believe we actually heard.
After discussing a little bit afterwards, we decided I was right. It happens from time to time.
Not very often. That was his one time of the trip. So here's what actually happened.
What actually happened?
You say it! Oh my god! So here's what actually happened.
The guy that we saw the picture of didn't lead with the torch, but he carried it. And apparently this is something that, it's an honor that is bestowed upon Olympian citizens that also are runners. and he carried it not only once, but twice. We were able to hold the torch that he ran with from the 1980 Olympics that ended up in Moscow.
And he and his sister were the shop owners. And so we initially passed them by, but they called out to us again, and Bill ended up talking to the sister, and that's how we ended up inside their shop and holding the torch. It happened so fast, we only took one photo. It was amazing. We are going to put the name of their shop down below. So if you are in Olympia yourself, we highly recommend going to this shop, hearing about their story. If you want, buy a little trinket. You have no obligation to actually buy anything, but the experience itself is worth stopping by and saying hi. And maybe you won't argue with your spouse about what you hear them tell you for the version of events that took place.
I wasn't arguing, I was just telling you why you were wrong. And we now return you to your regularly scheduled programming from Tales from Our Pocket.
We just finished both museums, and I think that they're both worth a quick walkthrough. Neither of them really takes very long. If you happen to come in the summer, the air conditioning is stronger in the Architectural Museum than in the one about the Olympic Games. I think overall, my impression of Olympia maybe is a little bit biased this year because we happen to be here the year that the Olympic Games are taking place in Japan. Now, it should have been 2020, but COVID. But since they are delayed and happening in 2021, I feel like it makes going to the museums and coming to these ruins that much more interesting to us. Like, it's really cool to see how many of the current traditions relate back to ancient Olympian times. Like, it's just crazy how many things have carried forward and to see how other things have evolved, like women being able to participate and women being able to watch.
That's a new thing. So we're wrapping up here in Olympia, and we're off to Delphi next. So thanks for joining us, and join us on our next adventure. We'll see you then.